The morning he woke and found her gone, the fire was still warm. Smoke rose from the ashes in the hearth, curling like ghostly fingers that reached for nothing. A half-burnt log popped, sending sparks into the air, and the scent of her wild lavender and river water still lingered on the blanket beside him. But the space where she had slept was cold. For a moment, Taza thought it was a dream, that maybe she had gone to fetch water from the creek or gather wood before the day's heat came. But something in his chest, something old and quiet, told him the truth before his mind did. She was gone. He sat up, the old cot creaking beneath his weight. Sunlight sliced through the cracks in the cabin wall, turning the dust in the air to gold. The small home he had built in the canyon was simple, just 4 walls, a roof patched with hides, and a view of the wide desert valley below. It had always been enough for him. Until Evelyn Hart came. She had been a woman of 30, strong-backed, proud, and tired of pretending to belong in a world that didn't want her. When she stumbled into his life one evening, her horse lame, her dress torn, her eyes blazing with fear and hunger, he hadn't asked where she came from. He only offered water and warmth. That night the desert had howled with wind, but inside the cabin it was still. Evelyn had sat near the fire, her face half-shadowed, and whispered, "You live like the land itself, wild, quiet, and untamed." Taza had not known how to answer, but when she leaned close, when her fingers brushed the scar on his cheek, the world stopped. She was unlike any settler woman he had known. There was no fear in her eyes, only longing, and a sadness he could not name. They spent that night together, their breaths rising with the smoke, their hearts finding brief shelter in one another's brokenness. She had told him things she never told anyone, that she had lost her husband to the river 2 winters ago, that she had been cast out by her own kin for loving a man they called a savage. Taza, who had seen death in war and exile, had said only this, "You are safe here," and she had whispered back, "Then I will never leave." But now she had, outside, the sky was blood-red with dawn. The canyon stretched endlessly before him, its cliffs catching fire from the sun. A hawk circled above, calling out to the silence. Taza stepped barefoot onto the cold earth. Scanning the ground, he saw faint tracks, small, hurried footprints leading away from the cabin. They vanished near the ridge where the wind had swept the sand clean. No horse prints, no wagon marks, just a torn piece of blue shawl hanging from a mesquite thorn. He reached out and touched it. The fabric was still soft, the same one she had wrapped around herself when the nights turned cold. It fluttered in the breeze like a dying flame. Taza mounted his horse, Kohan, a black stallion with a white streak down its nose. He pressed his knees into its sides and rode toward the horizon. The wind lashed at his hair, carrying whispers of her scent. He rode until the sun hung high, until his shadow grew thin beneath him. But there was no sign of her, no campfire smoke, no broken trail, no voice calling back to him by nightfall. He returned to the cabin, heart heavy, body aching. He sat by the cold fire and stared into nothing. Coyotes howled in the distance. Somewhere the river murmured, mocking him with the sound of things that never stopped moving. He had fought white soldiers who burned his village, survived hunger that killed stronger men, and faced loneliness that made wolves his only companions. But this emptiness was worse than all of it. He lay down on the floor, clutching the shawl to his chest. The smell of lavender and smoke still clung to it. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the weight of her head on his shoulder, the sound of her laughter echoing through the canyon, but the harder he tried to hold on to her, the more she slipped away like sand through his fingers. When sleep finally took him, he dreamed of her standing on the other side of the river, calling his name, her hair glinting like sunlight on water. He tried to cross, but every step sank him deeper into the current until her face blurred, and the river swallowed her whole. He awoke before dawn, heart pounding. The fire was still dead. The cabin still empty. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly under the fading stars. And somewhere out there, beyond the mountains and the miles, Evelyn was gone. And Taza knew, deep down, that finding her again would cost him more than his heart. For 12 moons, Taza lived in silence. The world around him had shifted, hardened. The canyons no longer echoed her laughter, only the cry of hawks circling the empty sky. The desert, once filled with her presence, now felt hollow, each gust of wind carrying whispers he could not catch. He spent his days moving between settlements, trading skins for grain, always watching the horizon as if the land itself might give her back. Each night, he lit a small fire outside his cabin. The flames rose against the dark, a beacon that no one ever answered. Some nights he thought he saw her in the smoke, her eyes, her smile, her hands reaching for him. But when the wind turned cold, she vanished, leaving him alone with the stars. Men spoke of him in half fear, half respect. The ghost of the canyon, they called him. The savage who waits for a woman who's never coming back. But Taza ignored them. The desert was his world. Waiting was all he had left. Late one evening, he rode north, chasing the scent of rain. The monsoon clouds had gathered over the far ridges, dark and swollen, promising water for the first time in months. His horse, Kohan, snorted beneath him, hooves pounding over cracked earth. As lightning split the sky, Taza saw something glinting in the distance, a flash of metal, a shape half buried in sand. He slowed, dismounted, and found a wagon overturned and broken. Its canvas was torn open, wheels shattered, one half buried by drifting dust. The storm wind groaned through the spokes. He moved closer, scanning for signs of life. None. Inside, however, he found something that made his breath catch: a child's blanket, small and worn, its edge stitched with blue thread. He knew that stitching. Evelyn's stitching. She had once torn his old war shirt, then mended it with the same pattern, laughing as she told him, "See? You're half wild, half mine." His hands trembled as he lifted the blanket. The scent was faint but real, lavender and smoke, the same as her shawl. Evelyn. He whispered to the wind. Rain began to fall, fat drops hitting the wagon wood like drumming fingers. The storm rolled closer, swallowing the light. Taza took cover beneath the wagon, clutching the blanket, heart pounding. Was she alive? Had she passed this way? Or had the desert already taken her too? When morning came, the rain had washed the land clean. Taza found tracks: 2 sets of boots, a horse, and smaller prints. Perhaps a child's. They led east toward Silver Creek town, a growing settlement where miners and drifters gathered like flies around spilled whiskey. He saddled Kohan and followed. The trail wound through plains that whispered in the wind. Tall grass swayed, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. He remembered Evelyn's voice that first night they met, trembling as she told him she feared storms. He had held her close and said, "The rain only takes what doesn't belong to the land." But now, he wondered if it had taken her from him too. Hours later, he stopped at an outpost, 3 cabins, a windmill, and a lonely storekeeper who squinted at him through the dust. "You looking for someone?" The man asked, spitting into the dirt. Taza nodded. A woman. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. About 30. The storekeeper scratched his beard. "Can't say for sure. A few months back, a lady come through with a busted wagon. Had a small child with her. Paid in silver. Stayed the night, then moved on toward Silver Creek. Weren't talkative." Taza's pulse quickened. She had a blue blanket? The man frowned. "Yeah, I think so." That one. She kept close to the little one. "You kin to her?" Taza's jaw tightened. "Once," the storekeeper shrugged. If she's still alive, she's in Silver Creek. But I'd be careful, friend. Folks there don't take kindly to your kind." That night, Taza camped near a stream. The moon rose silver and cold, casting its light over the still water. He stared into his reflection, the lines on his face deeper now, his eyes darker. He thought of Evelyn's voice, soft and sure, telling him she'd never run again. He thought of her hand on his chest, the warmth of her breath against his skin. Then he thought of her gone, vanishing into dawn, leaving him with only a ghost of her scent and a patch of blue sky to curse. He held the child's blanket to his face and closed his eyes. It still smelled like her, still carried traces of a life he couldn't let go. And as he sat there in the dark, the wind carried a faint sound, a woman's whisper, or maybe only the river's song. "Taza, don't stop waiting for me." He lifted his head, listening. His heartbeat slowed. The world was vast and cruel, but somewhere out there, she was alive. He felt it in his bones, and the fire that refused to die in his chest. When dawn broke again, he mounted Kohan and rode east toward the rising sun and toward whatever truth waited for him in Silver Creek. The town of Silver Creek rose from the dust like a wound that refused to heal, half-built dreams and rusting, iron scattered under the brutal western sun. Smoke curled from saloon chimneys, mingling with the stench of sweat, gunpowder, and whiskey. Horses clattered down the main street, and somewhere, a woman's voice sang from behind swinging doors. Lost beneath the shuffle of boots and drunken laughter, Taza kept his hat low and his head down as he rode through. His skin and braids drew eyes, some curious, some hateful. Men paused at the hitching posts, their hands drifting close to their holsters. The world here had never been kind to his kind. He had come searching for her. For Evelyn Hart, the woman who had promised never to run. Every face he passed was a ghost he wanted to forget. Every woman's laugh twisted his gut. He followed the river road out of town, hoping for a sign. The noon sun glared off the water, blinding him. He pulled on the reins to stop his horse, letting Kohan drink. And then he saw her. She was kneeling on the riverbank, sleeves rolled, washing a line of small clothes in the shallows. Her golden hair, once long, was now cropped to her shoulders, tangled by the wind. She wore a faded blue dress, patched and mended, her skin kissed by sun. For a long moment, Taza couldn't move. The sound of the river faded. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath. "Evelyn," he said at last, voice rough as stone. She froze. The cloth slipped from her fingers into the water. Slowly, she turned. The color drained from her face, then returned in a rush of disbelief. Her lips parted, trembling. "Taza," she whispered. "Dear God, I thought you were dead?" He finished for her. She nodded. Her eyes glistened. "You disappeared after that night. I thought they'd killed you. I thought you thought wrong." His gaze flicked past her, then stopped. A child sat a few feet away on a blanket in the grass. A boy no older than one. Fair hair, pale skin, wide blue eyes. He was stacking river stones and humming softly to himself. Taza's chest tightened. The boy looked up and smiled. The smile hit him like a bullet. He dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the wet sand. "Who is he?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the wind. Evelyn hesitated. She gathered the small clothes into her basket as if delaying the moment would change it. "His name is Samuel." Taza's hands clenched. "Your son?" She looked at him, eyes full of apology. "Yes." Silence stretched between them, long and heavy. The river gurgled softly, a cruel reminder that life moved on even when hearts broke. Taza finally spoke, his words thick with pain. "He is not mine." It wasn't a question. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered. "He isn't." Taza turned away, staring across the water. His reflection looked foreign, older, harder. You said you would never leave. You said, I know what I said, she interrupted, voice trembling. But I had no choice, Taza. Men came. They wanted to hang you for being with me. I ran because if I hadn't, you'd be dead. He looked back at her sharply. And you found another man. Evelyn's chin quivered. I found someone who helped me when I was alone. I was broken, terrified. I thought you were gone forever. He stayed for a while, then left without a word. I didn't even know I was carrying his child until months later. Taza's jaw flexed, his breath unsteady. He took a step closer, the sunlight glinting off the silver beads woven into his hair. And now you live here washing clothes by a river, raising his child, while I burned in the desert waiting for you. Her tears fell freely now. I never stopped thinking of you, Taza, not one day. Every night I prayed you'd forgive me. He closed the distance between them, standing so near she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Forgiveness? He said bitterly. You gave me one night and took away a lifetime. Evelyn's breath caught. And yet you still came back. He looked at her long and hard, his expression unreadable. Then his gaze drifted to the child again, small, innocent, unaware of the fire between them. The boy held out a smooth river stone toward him, smiling. For you, Samuel said softly. For a heartbeat, Taza hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the stone dot, the touch of the child's tiny hand against. His calloused fingers undid something deep inside him. The boy's skin was not his. His eyes not his. But his smile, the purity of it, was something neither blood nor betrayal could erase. Taza closed his hand around the stone. The river brings what it will, he said quietly, and takes what it must. Evelyn looked down, voice barely a whisper. Will you stay? He looked past her, toward the rising dust from the town, where danger and memory waited alike. That depends, he said, on whether you're done running. The sun dipped low over Red Hollow, staining the sky with deep crimson streaks that looked like bleeding clouds. A storm was building in the distance, and even the wind seemed to whisper of what was coming. Ethan leaned against the split-rail fence outside his cabin, staring toward the horizon where dark clouds gathered like a warning. He hadn't seen Lena since that day by the river. Her words haunted him, soft, trembling, full of a pain he couldn't erase. You left, Ethan. You left when I needed you most. Every night, those words came back to him like the echo of thunder. And each morning, he woke with the same question burning in his chest. Did she ever forgive me? A low growl of thunder rolled across the valley. Ethan turned as a figure appeared from the tree line, a rider cloaked in the dust of travel. As the horse drew closer, he recognized the face under the wide-brimmed hat. It was Deputy Cole, his old friend and sometimes his only link to the town that wanted nothing to do with him. Cole dismounted, his boots sinking into the mud. Ethan, he said quietly, you need to come to town. It's about Lena. Ethan's heart clenched. What about her? Cole hesitated, glancing toward the darkening sky. She's in trouble. That outlaw gang Kane's men, they came looking for you. When they couldn't find you, they took her. The words hit harder than any storm. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears, and before Cole could say more, he was already saddling his horse. You can't go alone, Cole warned. Those men are killers. Ethan's eyes darkened. They'll wish they were dead before the night's over. Rain began to fall as Ethan rode hard toward Red Hollow. The storm unleashed itself, turning the land into a chaos of wind, lightning, and mud. Every hoofbeat echoed his fury. Every flash of lightning reflected the war in his soul. He wasn't just riding for Lena, he was riding for redemption. For every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment he let his heart become as cold as the iron he carried at his hip dot by the time he reached the edge of town. The streets were deserted. Doors were barred, lamps dimmed. Only the saloon windows flickered with light and the silhouettes of men inside. Kane's men. Ethan dismounted quietly, tying his horse in the shadows. The rain masked his footsteps as he approached the saloon doors. Through the glass he saw Lena, her wrists bound, her face bruised but proud. Kane, a thick-shouldered man with a scar down his jaw, leaned close to her, grinning like a wolf. "Where's your Apache lover now?" Kane taunted. "Reckon he left you for good this time." Lena didn't answer. She just stared at him with fire in her eyes. Then the saloon doors creaked open. Every head turned. Ethan stood there, soaked to the bone, lightning flashing behind him. His long black hair clung to his shoulders, tribal jewelry glinting faintly beneath the wet strands. The muscles in his chest tightened as his hand hovered near his revolver. "I'm right here," he said. The room fell silent. Kane's grin faltered. "Well, I'll be damned. The half-breed shows up after all." Ethan stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. "Let her go, Kane. This is between you and me." Kane laughed. "You think I'm scared of some savage with a gun?" Ethan's voice was steady, calm like the eye of a storm. "You should be." In one motion, his hand flashed. The revolver roared. A single shot rang out, splitting the silence, and Kane dropped, his gun clattering to the floor. The others scrambled for cover, but Ethan moved like lightning. 2 more shots, precise and fast. The room filled with smoke and fear. When it cleared, only the rain could be heard against the roof. Ethan rushed to Lena, cutting her bindings. She fell into his arms, trembling. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. He cupped her face, his eyes softening. "Not this time." Outside, the storm began to fade. But in Ethan's chest, the storm still raged, a storm of love, loss, and the haunting truth that redemption always comes with a price. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried the taste of smoke and blood. Ethan stood beside the saloon doorway, his chest heaving as thunder rolled in the distance. Bodies of Kane's men lay scattered on the floor, the wooden planks slick with rainwater and whiskey. Outside, the storm had quieted, but a heavier silence took its place, the kind that came after justice. Or vengeance, or maybe both. Lena sat on a chair nearby, her wrists raw from the rope burns, her eyes dark with worry. She looked at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time in years. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, voice trembling. "They'll come for you now." Kane wasn't alone. Ethan holstered his revolver, his movements deliberate. "I don't care who they send." His voice was low, edged with pain and resolve. "I wasn't letting them take you again." For a long moment, neither spoke. The saloon creaked with the wind. Then Lena said softly, "You always do this. You save me, then disappear like a ghost. Do you think that's love?" Ethan looked away, his jaw tightening. He wanted to tell her everything, the sleepless nights, the regret, the dreams where he still felt her touch, but the words stuck in his throat. "I thought leaving was what you wanted," he said finally. "What I wanted." She echoed bitterly. "You left before I could even tell you I was with child." The world tilted for a second. The storm outside seemed to roar again inside Ethan's chest. "With child?" He repeated, almost in disbelief. She nodded, tears glimmering but not falling. "You were gone before I even knew. I looked for you. But when I couldn't find you, I moved on." Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding. "And the baby?" Her eyes met his strong, unflinching. "The baby isn't yours, Ethan." It was as if the world froze in that instant. Every sound disappeared, even the creak of the saloon. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He'd imagined so many versions of their reunion, some angry, some tender, but never this. never the image of her holding another man's child. He turned away, staring out into the wet, empty street. "Whose?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "A man who helped me when I was lost. He's gone now. And the child, she's all I have left of that time." The ache in Ethan's chest deepened. He felt anger rise, but it wasn't directed at her, it was at himself. At the choices he made. At the emptiness he carried. "I don't blame you," he said finally. "You did what you had to." Lena stood, approaching him. "Don't say that like it means nothing. You were my heart once, Ethan. You still are. But that night, when I thought I'd never see you again, I had to survive." Her words struck deep. Deeper than any bullet ever could. Ethan turned to her, and for a moment, they simply stood there, two broken souls bound by love and distance, each scarred by the other's absence. Then she reached out, her fingers trembling as they touched his cheek. "There's something else," she said softly. "They're still looking for you. Kane's brother is coming. You can't stay here." Ethan took her hand in his, rough fingers closing around hers. "I'm not running anymore," he said. "Not from them. Not from you. Not from what I've done." She wanted to argue, but there was something final in his tone, something that told her he had already decided his fate. The sky outside flickered with distant lightning, painting his face in ghostly blue light. His muscles tensed beneath the water-streaked tattoos that marked his Apache heritage. The wind lifted his long black hair, carrying with it the scent of rain and iron. "You saved me again," Lena whispered. "But I'm afraid this time it'll cost you everything." Ethan smiled faintly, though his eyes were tired. "Maybe that's the price of redemption." A moment later, Cole burst through the door, breathless and soaked. "Ethan, riders coming fast from the North Ridge 6, maybe 7 men. Looks like Kane's brother's leading them." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then let's finish what he started." Lena stepped forward, gripping his arm. "Please, don't throw your life away." He brushed her cheek gently. "I already gave it away the day I left you." And with that, Ethan stepped into the open street, the thunder of approaching hooves echoing through the night. Rain began to fall again, mingling with the dust as he faced the coming storm, not of nature this time, but of men and vengeance. The night would not end quietly. The rain returned with fury, hammering the earth like war drums. Lightning tore the sky apart in jagged streaks as Ethan stood in the middle of the muddy street, his long black hair whipping around his face, his chest bare and glistening from the downpour. The storm made him look like something carved out of the mountain itself, unyielding, primal, and ready to meet his fate. Behind him, Lena watched from the saloon doorway, clutching the edge of the frame, her heart pounding. She wanted to run. To him, to pull him away from the coming danger, but she knew Ethan's kind of resolve could not be changed. Once he chose a path, he would walk it to the end. Cole loaded his rifle and joined Ethan in the street. "You sure about this?" he shouted over the thunder. Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on the ridge where torchlights flickered through the rain. "I started this, Cole. I'll end it." Moments later, the sound of hoofbeats filled the night, dozens of them, heavy and relentless. Out of the darkness rode Kane's brother, Wyatt Kane, a cruel man with eyes like black ice and a snake's grin. His men followed close behind, rifles glinting under flashes of lightning. Well, Wyatt called out, his voice cutting through the storm. "Heard you killed my brother. Thought you'd be long gone by now, half-breed." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Your brother chose his fate," Wyatt sneered, "and I'm about to choose yours." The two forces faced each other in the downpour, Ethan and Cole against 7 armed riders. The wind howled through the empty town, whistling through shattered shutters and broken windows. Lena stepped out onto the porch, rain soaking her dress, fear etched in her face. "Ethan, please," she cried. "Don't do this." But Ethan didn't move. He turned his head slightly toward her, just enough for their eyes to meet. There was love there, and regret, and the unspoken truth that some men were born for storms like this one. Then, with a motion quicker than thought, Wyatt raised his rifle. The world exploded. Gunfire lit up the night, muzzle flashes blending with lightning as thunder roared above. Cole fired from behind a trough, dropping one of the riders instantly. Ethan moved like a shadow through the storm, his revolver flashing in precise bursts. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for everything he'd lost. Wyatt's men circled, firing wild shots into the chaos. A bullet grazed Ethan's arm, another splintered the post beside him. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, mixing with rain and blood. Lena screamed as Cole was hit in the shoulder and fell to the ground. Ethan dove toward him, pulling him behind a wagon. "Stay down," he shouted. Cole gritted his teeth, clutching his wound. "There's too many of them." Ethan reloaded, his expression carved from stone. Not enough. He rose again, a figure of raw fury and resolve, firing at the riders as they charged through the street. 2 more fell. Wyatt snarled, urging his horse forward, gun blazing. "Die, savage!" Ethan rolled into the mud, his revolver flying from his hand. Wyatt's horse reared up, nearly crushing him. In one swift motion, Ethan reached for a fallen rifle, spun it, and fired point blank. Wyatt's horse screamed, collapsing into the mud, throwing him off balance. Wyatt hit the ground hard. Ethan rose, chest heaving, water pouring down his face. Wyatt scrambled for his gun, but Ethan kicked it away. They stood face to face in the storm, lightning flashing between them. "This is for Lena," Ethan said coldly. Wyatt laughed through his pain. "You think killing me changes what you are?" Ethan hesitated for only a second, just long enough for Wyatt to draw a hidden knife. He lunged, blade flashing. Ethan caught his wrist, muscles straining, tribal jewelry glinting under the stormlight. With a grunt of rage, he twisted, and the knife turned back into Wyatt's chest. Wyatt's eyes went wide. He staggered, choking, then fell backward into the mud. The storm began to quiet. The last echo of thunder faded into the hills. Ethan stood over the fallen outlaw, breathing hard, his heart pounding like a drum. Cole groaned nearby, still alive but weak. The rest of Wyatt's men were gone, scattered like leaves in the rain. Lena ran to Ethan, tears mixing with the raindrops on her cheeks. "It's over," she whispered. Ethan looked down at his trembling hands, stained with blood and rain. "It's never over," he murmured. She touched his face gently. "Then let it be the end for tonight." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch for the first time in years. Around them, Red Hollow lay silent, washed clean by the rain. The battle was done, but something deeper still raged inside Ethan, the question of what came next, and whether peace could ever find a man like him. The sun rose slow and golden over Red Hollow, spilling across the valley like a promise the earth had been waiting a long time to hear. The storms were gone, and the town once filled with fear and gunfire now stirred with the quiet rhythm of morning. Children's laughter drifted down the dusty street. Horses stamped near the water trough. And the saloon doors creaked open not for violence, but for coffee and talk. Ethan stood at the edge of the same street where blood had mixed with rain 1 year ago. His long black hair was tied back now, streaked faintly with gray from the life he'd lived too hard and too fast. His chest bore new scars, marks of battle, of redemption, but his eyes, once filled with fire and pain, had softened. He still wore the symbols of his people, the bone necklace and turquoise beads, reminders of the tribe that had once called him brother. The old ways lived in him still, though he had walked far from the mountains that raised him. A small voice called from behind. "Papa!" Ethan turned, a rare smile spreading across his face. The little girl ran to him, her boots kicking up dust. She was maybe 4 now, with chestnut hair like Lena's and bright gray eyes that didn't belong to him, but somehow felt like they did. He knelt, catching her in his arms, lifting her into the air as she laughed. "Careful, Birdie," he said softly. "You'll scare the horses. I wanted to bring you flowers." She giggled, holding up a handful of wild daisies she'd picked from the field. He took them gently, tucking one behind her ear. "You're a brave one, just like your mother." Lena stepped out from the porch of the small cabin that sat at the edge of town. She wore a pale blue dress and a faint smile that reached her eyes. The last year had changed her too. There were no more bruises, no more fear in her steps, only peace, earned through pain and time. "You two look like trouble already," she teased. Ethan grinned, setting Birdie down. "She's got your spirit." "And your stubbornness," Lena shot back. For a moment, laughter filled the quiet air between them. It felt fragile, precious, like something neither of them dared to take for granted. Lena came closer, her hand brushing against his. "The town's different now," she said softly. "Since the fight that night. People still talk about what you did. How you faced Kane's gang alone." Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do it for the town. I did it for you." Her eyes softened. Maybe that's why it mattered. They stood there for a while, side by side, watching the sunlight break across the hills. The ghosts of the past still lived there, in the echoes of gunfire, in the smell of rain, in the memory of all they'd lost. But for the first time, those ghosts no longer ruled him. "I've been thinking," Lena said finally, "about leaving Red Hollow, about heading west near the river. There's a small settlement growing out there. Good land. Fresh start." Ethan's gaze followed the horizon. "A fresh start," he murmured. "Sounds like something I owe you." She turned to him, searching his face. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. You stayed. You fought. You changed." He let out a slow breath. "Maybe, but the world still don't look kindly on a man like me." Lena's voice softened. "Then we make our own world." He looked at her, the woman he'd lost and found again through fire and storm. The woman who carried another man's child but still shared his heart. The weight that had pressed on him for years began to lift, like fog dissolving in sunlight. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn trinket, a turquoise pendant shaped like a feather. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She gave it to me when I became a warrior. Said it was meant to remind me who I am." Lena took it gently, tears forming in her eyes. "Then let it remind both of us." He smiled faintly. "You sure you want to start over with an old Apache ghost?" She laughed softly. "You're not a ghost, Ethan. You're the man who came back." Birdie ran toward them again, holding a tiny wooden horse she'd carved from a stick. "Mama, Papa, look! It can run!" Ethan crouched, watching her run circles in the dirt. He looked up at Lena, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like running from anything. As the sun climbed higher, they began walking down the trail out of Red Hollow, the warrior, the woman, and the child who carried both their hopes. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the faint echo of drums and the songs of the old ways. Ethan didn't look back. He didn't need to. The storm was over, and for the first time, peace rode beside him.